discipline, excellence, empowerment. These principles, espoused by Fidel V. Ramos, made the Philippines globally competitive under his presidency from 1992 to 1998. His thumbs-up optimism and strategic forward-thinking, captured in catchphrases like caring, sharing, and daring, Philippines 1500, and pole vaulting, propelled the economy and social welfare. Under Ramos's leadership, the Philippines was dubbed Asia's next economic tiger. Ramos helped plan and implement President Ferdinand Marcos's martial law proclamation. But he broke away from the Marcos administration in February 1986, along with then Minister of National Defense Juan Ponce Enrile, to lead the People Power Revolution in toppling a dictatorial regime. Ramos was appointed by President Cory Aquino as Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief of Staff, as Chief of the Integrated National Police, and as National Defense Secretary. He successfully defended Cory Aquino's administration against a series of coups d'etats launched by rightist military rebels. Mr. President, great to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor. Likewise.
So it is the 29th anniversary of the EDSA revolution. Let's go back to 1986. Now, those 4 days you led this revolution.
That is one of the great achievements of my life. But I was not the leader of the 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution. I was the military leader. But the people were the ones, really, who counted the most. Because of the long years of martial law and the Marcos dictatorship, I think it was obvious to our concerned citizens at that time, including those of us in the armed forces, and also up to now among our young people, that it was time for regime change and for our people and the Philippines to be restored back to real democracy that would be in the hands of an empowered Filipino citizenry. That's really how it began. Now, some of us were in high positions in government, and so it was not easy for us to express our real feelings about the Marcos administration. On the other hand, the opportunity came when President Marcos announced snap elections for February 1986, perhaps thinking that he would win the presidency and all the high positions very readily. But of course, he was mistaken. Now, on that particular day, the 22nd of February 1986, I already knew the rumblings among the military, although I was not in the core planning group. I made sure that I knew what was going on. But at the same time, I was also still responsible for some 110 Philippine constabulary soldiers who had law enforcement authority and therefore were also policemen, and an equal number in the Integrated National Police. And these are the policemen at the local level.
So how did you divide? Because here you had to have clear communication lines with the police and the military, and you divided the tasks with Defense Minister Enrile at the time. He took care of the political part. You took care of dealing with military and police.
That was our agreement because naturally, you know, any movement of that scale or magnitude that was designed to effect regime change, meaning change the whole administration, needed the total support of all sectors of the Filipino people. The military and the national police were just the, you might call, the triggers as well as the protectors of the movement, which was really started by Cory Aquino, who was at that time, in February 1986, the opposition candidate against Mr. Marcos for the presidency.
Now, of course, after the snap elections and, you know, when Cory was installed into power, finally you were serving in her administration, there were 9 coup attempts. which you really handled in terms of crushing.
There were only two successful coups in Philippine history.
What were those?
And I was the military leader of both. Let's put it that way. Yeah? I was also the military leader against 9 failed coup attempts. These were during the administration of then President Corazon Aquino. The VD Commission that investigated the coup attempts against President Cory did not count on 2 more that happened after the Davide Commission adjourned. They had investigated only 7, but their mandate only lasted up to, I think, the end of 1989 in regard to the big coup attempt of December 1989. But there were 2 more, one in March 1990, and that was the so-called establishment of the Federal Republic of Mindanao. And the coup leaders were PMA graduates, some of them assigned to the Presidential Security Group in Malacanang under Cory. And the last one of all was in October 1990, which was the mini rebellion in the province of Cagayan, where Governor Rodolfo Aguinaldo himself led the local rebellion, which was put down very quickly, but which resulted in the death of many high-ranking armed forces of the Philippines officers, which was very, tragic.
Yeah.
If there are any among you out there today, 2015, thinking of coups, they will all fail because I'm not included. You got it?
Because that, in fact, because right now there are talks of coup attempts against President.
Well, talks
what
are
do you
very
think about
cheap. And
these alleged coup plots? Yeah.
the pro-administration, meaning pro-Pinoy or anti-Pinoy groups, just easily banter talks of that nature so freely. But really, it takes massive preparation, but very quietly done, to mount a successful coup, like in 86 and 2001. It's a dos. And it takes massive armed support under our system of a presidential system of government to make that happen.
Yeah.
But without the support of the senior military, including the retirees, can't do it. You can't do it.
In 2006, you were interviewed by Ellen Tordesillas, and you said that people power at that time was no longer relevant, not like before. Do you still believe that today?
Yes, because
Why?
the real solution to transformation, which must be preceded by 2 other kinds of action, no? Because it goes like this, some people just go into transformation without doing the first 2 steps, which are, number 1, perform your duties as an official and as a responsible citizen. Perform. Next is to reform. And this could be the government, Congress, officials, the young people, the senior citizens. And that will lead to transformation. Very easy. Perform. As we know in our system, you must perform as you pray. You can pray 24 hours a day, but you must also be performing at the same time.
Action.
But you must also pray as you perform. And the 2 go together.
So these are the lessons learned from EDSA that can be applied today. Is that
Yes.
right?
Now, we have not yet gotten into real reform because what we are trying to achieve in reform, congressional, business, administrative, leadership reform, etc., is to reduce poverty and the suffering of the majority of the Filipino people.
So the Special Action Force, you started that in 1983. Tell us about the SAF. And you have what exactly are the SAF? Because now we're hearing suddenly it's...
May 1983, my dear lady. And it was like this.
Fidel Ramos graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1950. Returning to the Philippines, he served as an infantry platoon leader with the 2nd Battalion Combat Team, Philippine Army, during the counterinsurgency campaign. He first gained military recognition during the Korean War in the 1950s, and later at the height of the Vietnam War from 1966 to 1968. Ramos rose from the ranks of the AFP mainly through his exploits as a field commander and his capability as a staff officer. Eventually, he became part of a group of generals that served as President Marcos's advisory council during his administration. For his critical role in bringing democracy back to the Philippines, Ramos was named Military Hero of the Peaceful People Power Revolution. Okay, Mr. President, let's talk about your military and defense career. You were in both the Korean and Vietnam Wars. Now, in the Korean War, you, along with the Philippines 20th Battalion Combat Team and your fellow West Point graduates in the 1950s, fought in the Korean War. Can you tell me what that was like?
The Philippines, by virtue of a very early Republic Act, soon after the Korean War broke out in June 1950, joined as one of 16 nations that came under the United Nations flag with combat troops to support democracy in Korea. And I joined the 20th BCT in January 1952. It was in the middle of winter. And we came from various units around the Philippines fighting the insurgents or the hukbalahaps or hooks, as we called them, during that early period. And we were all in our summer fatigues when we rushed to board the plane to go to Korea. Anyway, that was one of the hardships.
Yeah. Suffering
in winter conditions and living in a foxhole on the ground, which you had to dig yourself, no? Mm-hmm. Oh, hirap, no?
Yeah.
But in any case, on the other side, it was also like that. So things were equal.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, during the Vietnam War, you were there as a non-combat civil military engineer and commanding officer of the Philippine Civil Action Group, PhilCAG. What was it like then? So non-combat naman dito.
In a certain way, that was even more difficult.
Really?
Of course, in Vietnam, the environment, the weather was just like here in the Philippines. But the fact that we had a balanced outfit, meaning we had combat, artillery and infantry, but our mission was non-combat, which was community development and improving the health of the people of Vietnam where we were assigned, and doing a lot of engineering works to help the development of the people, etc., etc. So it was difficult to be in a combat area that was infiltrated by North Vietnamese and Viet Cong. These were the South Vietnamese guerrillas, and you couldn't distinguish them from the civilians.
Yeah.
Everybody was in a black pajama. While at the same time, you were ready for combat, but you couldn't really use your weapons for any offensive, but only to shoot back after they shot first at you.
Given your experiences in the military, how would you judge how this whole botched operation of Mamasapano, Maguindanao happened? What are your thoughts on the investigation so far, the findings, the hearings?
We must put that event called Mamasapano within the context of our peace process. Our meaning government of the Republic of the Philippines and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. This is just one of so many events, but it was a terrible, very terrible disaster, call it. I lament the fact that where it could have been so easily done, there was no, or at least not enough, bonding and teamwork at the very top. Some people call this coordination. I call it national teamwork.
Right.
Because that is the way we should always be in the police and the military, especially now that the armed forces of the Philippines has separated the former Philippine Constabulary Integrated National Police. It is more than just coordination. There is bonding that is involved here. And beyond that, confidence-building measures with the other party, who is the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. And I see that these are the failures in our system today.
Yeah. Indeed.
And must not be blamed upon the lower officers, because it is the political leaders in this country who themselves are responsible for the chain of command.
The commander-in-chief is definitely accountable. When the DILG secretary says he didn't know, do you think that, I mean, should Secretary Marrojas
That
have known
is
about this?
entirely plausible, because although he could have been asked by the commander-in-chief to do certain operational things for the commander-in-chief, the secretary, DILG, was completely kept in the dark. As an alter ego to the president and the chain of command, he can be delegated by the president with certain powers for a short period of time.
So the Special Action Force, you started that in 1983. That was under your leadership. Tell us about the SAF. And you have, what exactly are the SAF? Because now we're hearing suddenly it's...
May 1983, my dear lady. And it was like this.
How did that come about? Yeah.
Well, in the Army, and I spent 20 years in the Army, including becoming Brigadier General, I commanded as an infantry captain the Special Forces Company, parenthesis, Airborne, Philippine Army. And I was there for 3.5 years until it became a group, meaning bigger than a battalion. And this was the strike force of a portion of the Philippine Army, together with the Rangers, which was a separate outfit. But now the Rangers and the paratroopers and the special forces and the commandos and those other special elements in the armed forces have been combined under a Special Operations Command there in Fort Magsaysay. We created the same thing in 1983 in the Philippine National Police, or PC, Integrated National Police at that time, when I was their commander, because we needed also a strike force or a ready reaction force. But I was foreseeing, and this is already in 85, 86, that the Special Action Force could be our tagaligtas or protectors or rescuers in a very tight military situation, as we foresaw coming in February 1986. And they were very useful that way.
You always used to convene the National Security Council. For something like this, President Aquino did not convene such a council to discuss security measures. Should he have done so?
Well, we would convene the National Security Council for the formulation of policies in regard to security and defense and law enforcement, as well as on the strategy for the, what we call, I don't know if it still exists, but we had a very effective National Peace and Order Council, and that goes all the way down to the barangays, including the civilian officials. I don't see it now.
Now, you mentioned confidence building. Now, confidence has been very low in the administration after this whole incident. What should the president do or the administration do to address this low level of confidence now?
The president may have done the right things in meeting with the chairman of the MILF, and that is Chairman
Iqbal.
Murad Ibrahim. No? And Iqbal is the chief negotiator.
Right.
But his meetings with Murad Ibrahim, according to media reports, were abroad. And maybe they should have been done here in our home country. That's one. So that there is more appreciation of these things. And therefore, more confidence is built among the Filipino population, both Muslims and non-Muslims. But the real confidence measures would be for the benefit of the people, as we did with the MILF. During the period from 1996, 97, up to the time of President Estrada in April 2000, when the peace was shattered by his all-outward policy. But among the confidence measures that we did was, on the request of Chairman Hashim Salamat of the MILF, we did water systems using solar power for the entire Camp Abubakar community of about 25,000 people. And concreting the barangay roads leading to their headquarters in Camp Abubakar, which is at the tri-border of the provinces of Maguindanao, North Cotabato, and Lanao del Sur. Very inaccessible place. But with a lot of people who wanted access to civilization like Cotabato City and Marawi, etc., etc. No?
And because of your work, this peace agreement, the Philippines was awarded the 1997 UNESCO Peace Award, the first for Asians.
In fact, this was so well crafted by the United Nations that we were two co-awardees. Chairman Nurmiswari was a co-awardee and I representing the Philippine government. And so this was well applauded by our own people, especially by the Muslims in Mindanao, but also around the world, because this was a UN award, 190 countries at the time.
President Ramos, the first few years of your administration, that was what, 1992 to 1995, were characterized by an economic boom. What did you do to get the coalition together?
Here, you mobilize the capacity and talents and capital of the private sector, our people, to participate in Philippine development.
Sa paglilingkod sa bansa.
When Fidel Ramos became president in 1992, he inherited a nation in the midst of a deepening crisis marked by problems such as prolonged political instability, exacerbated by mounting casualties from attacks by Moro secessionists, military rebels, and terrorists, and an ailing economy. Ramos led the Philippines in remarkable gains, revitalizing the economy, repairing the infrastructure, and establishing peace with dissident factions of the country. Since 1986, Ramos has been known to be a powerful figure who has tilted the balance in the constantly shaky world of Philippine politics. Although his administration faced its share of corruption charges, Ramos has been lauded as the most capable of all the post-EDSA presidents. Okay, President Ramos, the first few years of your administration, that was what, 1992 to 1995, were characterized by an economic boom, technological innovations. A lot happened. What did you do to get the coalition together to really improve development and progress?
We had a unifying element in all of that, which consisted of almost zero growth at the beginning. And this was from previous administrations. And one of the key reasons for the almost zero growth was the 8 to 10 to 12 daily blackouts. Or brownouts when the power supply failed because of the huge power demand. Anyway, we promised the people we will solve this within 1 year. But please grant me some emergency powers which should last only for a short time and will deliver. And sure enough, by December 1993, or 18 months after I assumed the presidency, we were able to restore electric power all over the country by switching on the Christmas lights. And that was the symbolism. And I thank our legislators in both houses, Senate and in the House, for putting up a law that recreated the Department of Energy, which had been abolished during President Cory's time. With that momentum and with other reforms in the other important sectors like transportation, we also deregulated that. And then telecom, that probably was the biggest advance in the course of the first 2 years, where there were only a limited number of landlines around the country because of monopolies and a private interests not attuned to the welfare of the people. We were able to provide wireless communication as well as landlines to all of our 16 regions at that time, all over the country.
It was under your administration that the Philippines became a pioneer in the BOT, Build, Operate, Transfer scheme, right?
Yes.
So this is railways, as you said, telecommunications, which proved to be a problem
It became so
later
popular
on.
that other countries adopted this. Here, you mobilize the capacity and talents and capital of the private sector, our people, to participate in Philippine development. And I call this very simply, and this our people understand. I don't know why it's not being done now. The Philippine economy must move like we cook our favorite pastry called the bibingka or Filipino rice cake with fire from the bottom and fire from the top put together in a very balanced manner. So what's this? It is the effort at the grassroots of ordinary Filipinos who have plenty of talent, initiative, entrepreneurship, and you might say risk-taking. But balanced with this, what's this? Fire from the top, leadership, if any, marketing, international networking, branding, as well as access. Infrastructure must be put in place so that our products, our services can be marketed to the whole world.
Well, if we look at the example now, if we look at the Metro Rail Transit 3, I mean, this went through so many hands, private, public, and then some of it was work and from other countries. And it's a problem now. Maintenance is a problem. How would you suggest we address this? Because now there's always glitches in the MRT. There's no real maintenance provider.
We must make sure, first of all, that our economic growth, which is at the rate of almost 7%, looking at 2014, and that's a great accomplishment. But this is, unfortunately, confined only to classes A, B, C, meaning upper middle class, and does not shift down to D and E, or the masses of our poor people. And so, if we distribute the benefits of economic growth all the way down below, I'm sure we will be providing for the needs of the people in terms of mass transportation. Can you imagine the loss of economic potential and actual growth because of the 2-3 hours each young person like this one, or this guy here, or you even,
we lose so much of our life.
If you don't have a personal car, in going to or coming back from work. Or even if you have your own personal car, even a tiny one like that can go through the little spaces in the traffic, it will take you that much time to get to work. And there's no excuse for this if there is only prior planning. When I say prior planning, it should not be limited to the term of an official of 3 years for mayors, governors, congressmen, or 6 years for senators and presidents and vice presidents. No. Plan for a whole generation. This is what we did in the power. We planned for 25 to 30 years. The same with water that was privatized for Metro Manila, 25 to 30 years. The same for the big skyway systems like the Skyway 1, which we did, and also LRT 2, which we did, and MRT 3, which we started. Sayang if the succeeding administration do not build on the gains of the previous, because otherwise infrastructure, services, and our export products cannot continue in a growth momentum.
Well, always changes on the interests of the new leadership, isn't it? Now, speaking of infrastructure, under your administration, during the Centennial, so the Centennial Expo Filipino project, many people say that was kind of like a white elephant project because a lot of money was put into that because it was an important time. So that was 9 billion pesos, 1.7% of the country's 1998 national budget. And there were critics saying this was not necessary. What do you have to say to that?
Well, we, after I graduated, faced the critics. And sure enough, in my case, I was invited to the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee and charged before the committee as respondents. I was a resource person, but the respondents were 5 of my cabinet members or officials with cabinet rank, plus Vice President Salvador Doy Laurel as chairman of the Philippine National Centennial Commission. So I said, okay, I will appear. I want you to know that these people of mine in my administration are blameless. They are good public servants, and let's investigate. And I spoke before the Blue Ribbon Committee, and in the end, in the ombudsman at that level, as well as in the Sandigan by itself, the People's Court, these high officials, plus Vice President Doy Laurel, were absolved of any wrongdoing.
Earlier, you were talking about charter change and why you support a parliamentary system. You were always fighting for Cha-Cha. Now it became known as Cha-Cha. No? During the final years of your office especially, you tried to amend the 1987 Constitution. Why do you believe, why do you think this will really change things for the country? Is it really practical?
Well, I've always been saying, sure, we adopted for the Philippine system, the U.S. presidential system. But we don't have to use that perpetually. There are other systems that are probably now better suited for the Philippine citizenry. And this is the parliamentary system, Philippine style. We don't have to copy anybody. But in the parliamentary system, the heads of state and the heads of government are elected only within a given constituency or district and not countrywide. However, whoever wants to be head of state or head of government or both must be elected as leader of the majority political party, which means less expense during national elections and less propensity to be dishonest about your public office and get involved in massive graft and corruption, just like PDAF. The point is that even regime change can easily be done in a parliamentary system where you don't have to invoke the support of the armed forces or the national police or both, because to change that incompetent, abusive, or absentee or cronyist government, for instance, in our country, all you have to do is to call for a no confidence vote in parliament. And this is probably among 300, 400 people voting secretly. And in one day, change takes place.
We grew up in a sporting environment, so much as other families would spend time together, you know, seeing movies or having dinner outside or, you know, going shopping, our bonding time was doing sports. Thank you to actually both my parents, but maybe more my mother, because she was really the athlete in the family. She was a national badminton champion. And of course, my father, having been a military man, and of course, physical fitness is so vital to his profession, to be a successful soldier. So we grew up in that environment, and for me, it was just a natural thing to get into sports.
What is it that you think people don't often know about your father?
He's corny. He likes telling jokes, for sure, and not only just jokes, but it's stale jokes. So like every time we see him, you know, he's got to tell the same jokes. Like, we've already heard that, but he still thinks like, no, it's still funny. Yeah, okay, it's funny.
Okay, Mr. President, you were always talking about how it's so important to get the younger generation into politics. What do you think of the generation today? First of all, in terms of their participation in social, political, economic aspects.
We have a young population in terms of the age of the workforce, as well as the talented people who go beyond the official age of retirement at 65 and still perform competitively in the academe, in business, and also in government. And in that sense, we are a young population. Now, on the other hand, we do have, unfortunately, existing in our political system, dynasties. And these are because of well-entrenched families in business, in politics, in media, who cannot let go of their positions of power. And they do this by just training and then getting their family members to rise into various positions in our national society. And this is unfair to the majority of us because under a democracy like ours in the Philippines, everyone is entitled to equal opportunity. And that is the equal opportunity also and especially the mobility to go up from the very bottom to the very top. And also horizontally in terms of influence and professional ability and also in terms of access to the world, you see. And if there are still, and there are so many, dynasties, monopolies, elites, aristocracies in our country, it is because we have not yet adopted the parliamentary system.
So post-presidency, you're still very active, and you were very instrumental in EDSA 2 to oust President Joseph Estrada and install Vice President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. Why were you so adamant about getting him there and GMA in when it definitely was a very uncertain
Let's
time?
just say that I was an outsider who, upon seeing these things happening, I was in Hong Kong at the time, came back and therefore joined in because of the massive abuse as shown in the impeachment proceedings so far, although there were no conclusions yet, no? So when I arrived at the airport in Naiya from Hong Kong on the, I think it was the 17th of January, 2001. And from that Naiya, Terminal 1, 18 kilometers, we started with 5 people. Myself, my staff officer, Colonel Legaspi, and 3 media people trying to interview me. And we ended up with 15,000 there at the EDSA Shrine in Ortigas and EDSA.
Now, you were very supportive of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. In the height of the election rigging scam in 2005, you convinced her not to resign. Why was that?
The sequence in the case of President Gloria Arroyo X was we were in favor of her to succeed because she was the vice president. Whoever would have been the new president, if that person were vice president, would have been the one instead of Gloria Arroyo. But anyway, she became the one. And so we expected her to do better than the person she succeeded. But towards the next 2 or 3 years, she also had been reversing her direction.
Yeah.
She said, I'm not going to run anymore, but she did. Secondly, let's have honest, orderly, peaceful elections that are acceptable to the people. But no, she started getting caught, calling up a certain functionary in the chain of command by the name of Marcy. Hello, Marcy.
Marcy. Marcy. Yeah.
Anyway, that's the way it goes. But if we had the parliamentary system, she would have been removed and she would be free at home, enjoying life in her retirement instead of being in a hospital. If we had the parliamentary system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because no confidence vote lang naman lang kailangan yan eh.
Yeah. And this is something you constantly talk about, even now in the Ramos Peace and Development Foundation. This is basically what you're trying to bring change to society in different ways, no? So you want to contribute to bring about a good life for democratic society. So that's what's keeping you busy now.
After so many decades of conflict and even violence and also deadly war, including the use of not only atom bombs, but now the countries are poised to explode nuclear systems upon all of us. And here you do not need any B-29 bomber to deliver. You only have to press the button.
Yeah.
And the Pentagon strategy, although theirs is a defensive strategy, is strike, then they counter-strike. And then somebody else counter-strikes. And then it's a counter strike ad infinitum. And in 15 minutes, the whole world, including the 7.2 population, including you and me, are all wiped out. Is this what we want? I don't think so. What we want is a better future for everybody, and therefore a more harmonious, peaceful, and well-developed world.
Yes.
I think this is the ambition of the younger Filipino generations.
Yes. And this is the legacy also you were trying to leave,
I
no?
hope
With
so.
what you do.
I hope so.
Now let's step outside of that for a while and get back to when it comes down to it, it's the family that we really have to pay attention to. Your family, you've been married for 61 years now to Ming Ramos. How's that been? How has it been riding through that relationship?
This proves the principle that the longest sentence in the English language is, and I quote, I do, unquote. And it's really a lifelong sentence, and I've been under that imposition for 61 years now. But smile, kaya natin to.
That you really enjoy. And you're turning 87 next month. What is it? You've done so much, but what are you still looking? You have 8 lovely grandchildren. So you're a doting grandfather daw, ano? So ano pang hinahanap ni President?
I'm glad they're there, and although some are abroad, they come around, or they keep in touch with me through their cell phones or their iPads or their emails, etc. And I'm learning from them. And this is the way it should be. The older ones like me must continue teaching best practices based on experience to the younger ones, but at the same time, we must learn from the younger ones like you, new forms of bonding with others in the world, including strangers, so that we can achieve this aspiration of all, our dream of a one world, one family of 7.2 billion people. And there is no more civil war like in Syria. Wow. 200,000 people killed by Syrians themselves. Regime change bloody in Yemen, in Egypt, in Libya, in Tunisia, elsewhere.
Everywhere.
And violence in Mindanao. I don't think we want this. And I say, war is not an option. That is not our ambition. We want peace enduring and development sustainable.
Finally, well said, Mr. President. Thank you very much. It was great talking to you. Thank you for shedding light.
Thank you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Now we go back to work.
Yes, back to work.
One, two, three, four.